afternoon. Thank you for joining us for the COVID-19 Global Disruption Update webinar series. This is the start, or actually the end of our third week of our monthly long sessions. We've had 2 successful weeks of information sessions and then a question and answer forum program afterwards to help us all try to understand the changing legislation that's happening. Today's date is April 16th, 2020, in case you're viewing this recording at a later date and things have changed. Speaking of recording, we are recording this webinar, and so if you do not want to participate in a recorded session, please exit the recording at this time. I'd also like to take a moment and remind everyone that we are not attorneys or tax accountants, and as such, none of the information we are sharing here today should be construed as legal or financial advice. We always encourage businesses to consult those partners for guidance for their own organizations. On the phone from our team today, we have myself, Amanda Erickson, and Jeanie Invert from HRX Services. I will be presenting the content here and asking the questions, facilitating for our guests, and Jeanie will help to moderate and facilitate the chat and question answer section of the webinar. Jeanie, would you like to say hello?
Good afternoon. Excited to join. Can't wait to hear all the wonderful things that Rob has to share with us today.
Great. And thank you, Jeanie, for that nice introduction and segue there. I'd also like to take a moment to introduce Rob Timme, who is the Director of Operations for Ameriprise, to the conversation. Rob, would you like to say hello?
Hey, everyone. It's really good to be here today.
That's awesome. Between the 3 of us, we hold certifications in PHR, SPHR, SHRM CP, and SHRM SCP designations. And Rob is also licensed in the state of Colorado and Wyoming and on a national level for trading of commodities. We are also excited and thrilled to be able to say that we have the opportunity to do these sessions because of Elevate Virtual, which is a program that is designed from our friend Mike Kohler at Elevate and the Larimer County Workforce Center area. I know Mike wasn't able to join us today, but we did want to make a moment just to say thank you to him and his team for allowing us to have this opportunity. So let's go ahead and get started. The format for today's session is very informal and question and answer focused. We'll be working through some of the questions we received around this area, as well as answer some of the questions that we're hearing throughout our community and with our clients and partners. We're planning for an hour of content, but we'll just run through all of the questions, and whichever comes first, that's where we'll end. So let's go ahead and begin. So we've talked a lot recently about all of the things that you should be doing or what you shouldn't be doing or what you have to do. And I think people are feeling a little bit frustrated, maybe a little bit information overload, and we're feeling a lot of saturation of policies, processes, regulations that are happening. But Rob, from your perspective, when I say, and I think we talked a lot about this when we were kind of putting this session together, deciding what we should discuss and what we should talk about. And I think that we talked about what is now the time for then, right? So if it's not the time for a lot of these other things, what is it the time for? And let's focus a little bit in that space today. So with that in mind, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so yeah, I wanted to echo what you were saying. It can be a little overwhelming right now. And so this is a great session to have to talk about how to kind of rein it in a little bit and make it a little less overwhelming.
Certainly true. I feel like in the HR world, I feel like every place, every broker, every payroll provider, the government, every entity is out there trying to share with us what we should and shouldn't be doing. And I truly feel like it's just so much information. It's a little overwhelming, and certainly it takes a little exhausting, I would say. Would you say that that's the experience you're having as well from your side?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And your clients feeling that?
Our offices are fielding about 300 calls a day from clients. That's our average, and it's been that way for 2 weeks.
That is crazy. But makes sense. And we're thrilled that we have partners like you that we can ask and reach out to and say, what do we do? Because it is uncertain. We don't know what's going on. Okay, well, let's kind of dive into that a little bit further. So when we were talking about this, and on Tuesday, in our Tuesday session, just because I had the opportunity to share some of the nuggets of wisdom that you had shared with me when we were talking about this week's sessions, we talked a little bit about budgets. So tell me, is this the time to be thinking about budgets, or what are your thoughts on that?
So it's really interesting because the word budget evokes a negative emotion in most people. When I say, gosh, we need to get our budget together, everyone just cringes. But if you take a step back from that and think, in late 2019, the First National Bank of Omaha did a study of consumers, and their study showed that about 49% of the population that they looked at was living about paycheck to paycheck. And only, I would say, 53% of those participants even knew what an emergency savings account was or had even started one. And they were nowhere near funding 3 to 6 months of backup funds. And so it's a budget, for lack of a better term, and the easiest way to put it is literally just a list of money in and money out on a monthly basis. Where does the money go? You don't have to worry about being strategic. It's just keeping track of where does the money go on a monthly basis, so that you know, so that you can make decisions based on what that looks like.
So let me ask you, and I think that's really great because there are a lot of tools out there, right? There are a lot of tools that you can use, and then they help you with categories and things like that. But I think what you're trying to share is that can be overwhelming. Like, really what you need is just something simple to understand. And when you're talking about those 3 to 6 months, right? That's kind of what we're hearing you should have for an emergency fund.
Right.
Are you really thinking kind of like your core focus areas? Like, do you do in your own mind and how you look at it, or how you'd suggest for people, kind of some kind of fixed, like, you have this going out, mortgage, things like that, and then a variable kind of spending area, and people shouldn't get too hung up on that, because I know I can. I certainly can.
It's interesting when we're looking at our own budgets, it's easy to get caught up in the emotion tied to the budgetary item. So for instance, when you think about your mortgage, nobody likes to think about their mortgage. It's probably the single largest expense that you have, right?
Yeah.
And you say, oh, we're spending, $2,000 a month on this mortgage. Gosh, that eats into everything. And suddenly they start having a lot of emotion about that. But really, what you need to do is step back from the emotion a little bit and just look at the numbers. Here's all of the expenses that we have on a monthly basis, essential or non-essential, but just list them out. And then have a list of, okay, now here's all the sources of income that we have in our household on a monthly basis. Is there money left, yes or no, at the end of the month? If the answer is no, then now you can take another step. You can dive deeper if you want to and look at your expenses and say, the easiest way to do this is literally to list them out and rank them. What are essential? What are non-essential items? And then look at the non-essential items and say, okay, can we stop this particular thing, this subscription, for 3 months? Could we put this on hold, and would that put us in a better position? So really, the hardest part of looking at a budget is taking the emotion out. And that's the most challenging thing all of us face when it comes to looking at our own money situation.
So I can attest to that, because I can say, right now we're in a space where we're very busy. There's a lot going on. We're trying to make sure that we're staying on top of things. And so some of those things, even though I'm home and, you don't have that commute and you don't have some of these other details, for us, it's like, really, we ordered Domino's 3 times this week, that kind of thing. And as you're looking at it, you're like, Oh, so I get what you're saying. The emotion piece is like, I can look at my own budget and beat myself up pretty easily over some
Yeah.
of what I'm spending things on. And so I think what you're really suggesting here makes sense, right? Like, really talk about what do you have to have in order to make sure you feel comfortable, and don't beat yourself up or don't make it emotional. Like, you still need to eat. So if, hey, some of this has to be in the budget, then so be it, right?
Right.
So just
Right.
kind of understanding where you need to ebb and flow is good.
Right.
I think that's
Not
awesome.
putting a judgment on your expenditures is the most freeing thing that you can give yourself. It's a gift that you can give yourself, is to not worry about judging yourself during the course of creating a budget. And again, it doesn't have to be this overwhelming, complex thing. Literally, it can be a line drawn down the center of a legal pad, money in and money out, and what that looks like.
I appreciate that. I think that that's helpful. And I think that that kind of guidance could be helpful for HR leaders and business leaders, because,
Absolutely.
their employees may have some real disruption in what their money in situation looks like for a period of time. And maybe that's kind of how we did it. Hey, I understand I get this much money in, that's how I spend it, and now I don't. So there might be some real concern around that. And I just think that it's important to remind people that it's okay. You don't have to make it complex, and it's all right to
Right.
at least just know where you are. So right now might be the time to create some of those budget items and help work through that, understanding of what the money looks like for your individual situation.
Right. And during periods of instability, it's the last time you really want to be thinking strategically, but you need to know where you are so that when it's a little less unstable,
Yeah.
you can actually make some decisions. But you can't do that if you don't know where you are to start with. And that's all a budget is. It's just allowing you to understand this is our situation right now.
That's awesome. And Rob, just as a quick side note, I will say that it does look like although we had some technical issues at the beginning of the session, we do have some people joining in. So certainly I just want to take a moment and remind people that if you would like to offer a question that you need to have answered, certainly you're able to do that in the question and answer button, or question and answer box that is available to you in your tools box at the bottom of the screen. And I want to take just a quick moment to share again that we have Rob Timme with us. And Rob is here helping us. He is the Director of Operations for Ameriprise Financial, and also a friend and colleague, and we've known Rob for a long time. So we're excited that he's here to just share some ideas and thoughts around some of the financial well-being that we're talking about, and we know that our employees and colleagues are experiencing. So just so that you know kind of where we're at, we've really just begun, so you haven't missed anything up to this point. So that being said, anything to add on this subject in particular from you, Jeanie, by chance?
I wanted to take it from a very different approach. Rob took it from a very analytical, very strategic, very business approach. And I want to say retail therapy is a thing, and it's okay. And it's okay to spend money, and it's okay to save, and it's okay to plan. And I think what Rob said, I think I got really concerned because I pulled out my spreadsheet and I was updating my formulas. And he's right. It doesn't have to be that complex. It's as simple as in and out. And
Right.
you know how much you have coming in, and you know how much is going out.
I agree with that. I think that's really important point as well, Jeanie. And there's a lot happening emotionally for a lot of our folks right now, right? Maybe to the point, having a budget is good, but don't obsess about, okay, and now I'm going to make sure that I cut it in half. That may not be possible at the moment. In some circumstances, I realize that it may feel like that's what you have to do. But I would just say, give yourself a little grace. Let's work through this, slow the roll just a little bit, and know where you are. That's the first step.
Absolutely. One last item. If folks are super tech savvy or like to work on their phones and don't want to work on a spreadsheet, There is an app. I am not in any way affiliated with Dave Ramsey and his organization, but there is an app called Every Dollar.
Okay.
Get it on the App Store. The Every Dollar app, the only nice thing about that is it's an easy way using your phone to log those expenses. So know that it's out there. It's a very simple tool. Again, it's very money in, money out. But know that it's available out there on the App Store, and there's no charge for the app.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
And you're not endorsing it.
No,
No,
that's
no.
what he said. No. Very good. Very good. So let's talk a little bit then about a little deeper dive, right? So
Okay.
Is it the time now then to be changing a lot of our financial strategies? And I know you kind of pinpointed on this one a little bit, but speaking in particular, let's talk a little bit about maybe 401k loans. And we know that there's been some recent development around some easing of regulation on that and what you could do and how you could take care of or take advantage of a program like that. I'm
Right.
just curious, is now the time for people to kind of be thinking about changing some of those financial strategies?
So 401k loans are very challenging. And the reason I say that is, for instance, if you took out a $5,000 401k loan thinking that it was going to solve all of your financial problems short term, right?
Mm-hmm.
The problem happens is that you still have to pay, and some plans won't allow you to contribute to your plan while you're paying the loan back. So until you pay it back, the only contribution you have is literally paying yourself back with interest.
Yeah.
While you wait. And here's the real issue with that. If it takes you 5 years to pay back that loan, at the end of that loan, when you can start contributing again, the market will have rebounded and you're paying into your 401k at a much higher level rather than being able to contribute at a market low and take advantage of the rising market. A 401k loan, unless it's an absolute emergency, definitely would counsel against anyone doing that. But you know what? Let's be real. There are situations where it's an absolute requirement. And the nice thing about it is that there isn't the penalty that used to be there when you need to take money out of your 401k. So really evaluate that before you think about doing a loan out of your 401k.
I think at least for Jeanie and I, we think that that's the right idea as well. I think that we're just, you have to do what you need to do, but also just kind of keeping in mind that things do ebb and flow is a good thought process to have. I know that Jeanie was talking a little bit when we were kind of all chatting about this process, and I hope that she might be able to share a little bit more, but she had mentioned something around the lines of, make sure that you're trusting in your supply chains a little bit, right? Because it's not just the financial strategy for the 401k or anything like that. Let's talk about stocking up on a lot of goods and services and things that maybe you don't necessarily need, but there is certainly a level of not retail therapy, but maybe kind of financial coping that's happening in certain areas. Jeanie, did you want to share any of your thoughts around that, or did I capture kind of what you were thinking?
I think you captured it, and it's okay to say it's stop buying the toilet paper. I get it. It's fine. No, I agree, and I think initially when all this came about, because to the point is, this is new for a lot of people. They've never experienced this before. This is their first time in a pandemic, or perhaps this is their first time in this kind of beyond unusual work circumstances. This is the first time employers have had people working remotely when that's not the function or normal course of their business. So all of that set aside, trust in the supply chain. I mean, they are manufacturing toilet paper, they are manufacturing goods, they are not closing up, and it's not helping by that excessive purchasing or buying. In fact, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, it might make it worse because supply and demand, the more we buy, then the demand and the costs go up.
Absolutely. There is actually a business in Arkansas, I believe it was, that just had a visit from the regulators because they were charging $16 for a case of water because bottled water is in such demand.
To that point then, right? Once again, just making sure that we're kind of figuring a little faith, a little trust in our situation. I know it's unprecedented times. We don't understand exactly how everything is going to roll through, but I have to say personally, I'm just very impressed with how we are doing things and how our partners and clients are responding and the community is responding. And so I just think that that gives a lot of positive feeling toward a situation that's really hard, and it is hard, but does give us that opportunity to maybe shift a little bit and just be patient. So slow down a little. So I think generally speaking, is it the time for changing a lot of our financial strategies? By far and large, I think we're saying probably not at this point. As far as like really going out and, trying to max buy or emotionally sell, purchase, whatever it is that you might be inclined to do in kind of a more panic type situation.
Right. And it's human nature to have a knee-jerk reaction to a traumatic situation. You want to do something. I need to do something, right? And combine that with, oh, look, the markets are falling or the markets are up. I should do something about my financial situation. But you never want to have a knee-jerk reaction there. I mean, emotions are, unfortunately, they're the reason we buy things and the reason we sell things, and they can get in the way of making good, sound financial decisions. So if you really feel like you need to do something related to a 401k, evaluate what that money's for. Evaluate what your long-term goals are and how much risk you have within your 401k. Are you a person who feels like, hey, yeah, I'm gung-ho, I want to be aggressive, I want to grow this as fast as I can, and I know that there's a huge amount of risk there? Then make sure that the investments that you have align with that. If that money is instead set aside, maybe not in a 401k, but or in another type of an account that's more short term, like, hey, we've got this money set aside for a house that we want to buy, and I really want to be conservative. I want to preserve the money that's there because I know I'm going to need it to buy this house in a year. Take a step back, take the emotion out of it, and say, are the investments in this account aligned with the level of risk that I'm comfortable with taking? That's really, when you should be doing something, that's all you should really be doing right now.
And I think that you're hitting really carefully on this because we were talking a little bit about 401ks. We're kind of talking about their employee mindset. And then we've really hit into that personal space. I know that you shared with me that maybe, for example, this is something that you could look at. What are those opportunities that maybe you should be taking advantage of? You had mentioned something around the idea of refinancing, and I know that we have a slide that I want to share along with that. So maybe you can just speak a little bit to kind of what this all means. What does this slide in particular mean when we're looking at how the stock market, how things ebb and flow based on, certain events that happen in our country and in the world?
Right. And so most of the large financial organizations put together some type of slide that looks a lot like this. This one actually is one of the best I've seen from First Trust. And this says, okay, let's look at major epidemics since 1980 and how they've impacted the market over time. And you can see that even though there is an impact, that there is generally a dip in the market, there's always a recovery. And I know that sounds ridiculous, and I can't personally guarantee that there's a recovery, but there's always a recovery. And what that tells you is that the markets themselves are cyclical. There's down periods, and then they grow out of those periods. And so, yes, the markets are going to recover. So it's not the time to worry about your long-term investments at all. Really, you need to focus on your day-to-day, month-to-month living expenses and and the bills that go along with that, the expenses that you incur on a daily, if not monthly basis.
Agree. And I think that to that point, when you're talking with your financial advisors and you're talking with your team, there may be those opportunities that are there for you to try to take advantage of at this time for your own personal needs, that could be beneficial for you in the long run, but not to change drastically kind of everything you're doing.
Not your financial strategy overall, but for instance, you bought a house last year.
Yeah.
And your interest rate is, 4.87% on that mortgage. Now really might be a good time to look at a refinance option, simply because the interest rates have dropped so significantly. Your monthly savings could contribute to that emergency fund.
Yeah.
Your monthly expenses. Maybe it would pay for those late night shopping trips to Walmart. Right? So there are things to look at that are tactical things that you can do right now on the ground. Hey, look, what is our current mortgage interest rate? Can we get that interest rate down? And how much does that save us every month? That is a non-emotional response to a pandemic, and the interest rate drop that we've seen recently.
Yep. I think that's really helpful. And I know when we were talking about this slide and working through it, it's very visually reassuring almost, right? Is to see,
right.
We may be down in the dip, but that there has always been kind of a climb back out. Not that is for sure going to happen, but you feel more comfortable when you see some reports like this.
Absolutely.
Jeanie,
I would like to add, I'd like to add, Rob, you actually just gave amazing advice, and I want to take it a step further. So for those folks who are thinking of refinancing, not only is it an amazing time to do it, but maybe when you're going from that 4.87 or 7.8 that you said, and you can get a much better interest rate, maybe you can also knock it from a 30 to a 15. Sure. You may end up paying the same, but you've knocked off a significant amount of long-term interest that's also a savings back into your pocket.
Absolutely. So I think you said it beautifully. Rob and Jeanie's captured that for you as well. Is just that this is make logical thinking decisions in a time when I think our natural inclination is to be maybe somewhat more emotional. And I know we're going to talk about that in a little bit here too. So, okay, well, moving along. So let's talk about this next step. So how do I practice good self-care in general? And how do I encourage my employees to do the same? I know that we are graced with the fact that you have a lot of experience in the financial space, more so than I would ever care to know and understand in my own self. But you also have an HR background. This is what Absolutely. You do. And in your organization, you are that person to that organization. So it's a very unique position that you come to us from. So just curious, if I were to ask you this, what are the things that maybe you would suggest people should be considering or thinking about during this time?
So we live in an era of a 24-hour-a-day news cycle. And I don't know about you guys, but my inclination is to always have the news on, whether I'm reading it or I've got CNN on the background, always going. And I've found that actually just heightens my anxiety. It is the last thing on earth I should ever do. So one of the things that I did very early on was made it a conscious decision to really look at the news at a specific period of time, for a specific period of time. Every day, I allow myself this hour to actually get caught up on the day's events. There is nothing that's going to happen at Governor Cuomo's address at 11 a.m. every day that I need to know right then. I can wait until 5 o'clock and I can either tune into CNN or I can tune into whatever channel that I really feel like I can trust and hear the news and hear what happened. one of the other things that I have to personally watch out for is because I love Facebook. I'm a junk, admit it. And there's a lot of garbage on Facebook. There's a lot of garbage news out there. And so a lot of times, I'm very lucky in the fact that I have people that I can send that information to and say, can you validate this for me? Is this real? Or is this fake news? Which I hate using that phrase. Sometimes it is garbage. It really is. And so really, really be aware, be very mindful of your news source and how much you're exposing yourself to it, because it can wear on you and your anxiety level can go through the roof if you're in a constant news cycle.
I agree with that. And I think that you're right. Like having that, where is the right sources for you, making sure that you're validating the information that you're getting. As HR people, we talk about validity and reliability a lot. And I think that this is just another space where that is really important. And again, sharing that information out with your teams and saying, I think I know even some city and local authorities have said, have an hour a day of news, but then don't be saturated because information overload, right? It happens.
Absolutely.
And then I think, Jeanie, when we were talking about it, she had mentioned this concept of really understanding what our roles are and that we don't have to make decisions on our own. Jeanie, do you want to speak to that at all?
I don't remember that part of our conversation.
That's all right. Well, then I'll share. I mean, because it was impactful to me, and I didn't want to steal your thunder, but I will.
No.
So the way that I looked at, or the way that you mentioned it, you said, we as HR people, we don't make decisions in a vacuum. Like we do not. It is not up to us and us alone. In fact, our role is very much to work with our leaders, to be ready to offer opportunities, to think about solutions, to challenge some solutions that may come about, and that we should and offer and discuss what our best next steps should be. That's our role, right? Our role is not to come in and say, this is the way it needs to happen. There are times where we can say, it cannot happen that way, right? Like that is not what we should be doing, no. And we have to be that voice in the room that says that. But we don't make these choices by ourselves. Our leaders are very much involved in this. And so I think that was really helpful to me to remember, is that it's like, it's not up to me all the time. It isn't. It's not my decision alone. And that is a very good thing. I think that's healthy. It's healthy business practice. It's healthy in general.
Absolutely.
And so I love that concept of, limit the news, understand kind of what your job is, where your responsibilities lie, and don't own the world. It's okay, right?
Well, That's a great idea.
I know. I wish it was mine.
I think you're right on the limiting the news. I also want to kind of take it from a different standpoint. Maybe as HR practitioners, something we can do to encourage our employees to do the same. That's kind of hard because we are the rock for everybody. We are we're there for our leadership to guide them and give them best practices and hopefully, anticipate future risk and mitigate those for them, as well as keep the culture together before it slowly deteriorates due to the new term, COVID-19. It's now a phrase. It's not even a virus. It's a phrase. But anyway, was talking to someone this morning and just checking in to see how they were doing, and it dawned on me, we as HR people most companies have this resource available, and I think we often forget about it, and we shouldn't. And it's the EAP. Mm-hmm. And if we have it in your organization, first and foremost, highly encourage you as an HR person to use it because they have great resources on how to help while you're helping others, but give it to your employees. I mean, it has financial resources, legal resources, mortgage, elder care, child care, maybe not so much right now, but it's free to our employees. So I think that's something to think about.
Agree. And a good place to know if you are on this call and you're not sure if you have an EAP or an employee assistance program is to connect with your broker, your carrier, whoever you hold a relationship with in that space who provides or works with your benefits programs with you. Those are the partners that you want to reach out to and say, hey, because oftentimes an EAP may be a part of another benefit you have if it's not a standalone option. So certainly something to check out and make sure if you're not sure, those would be the places I would start.
Agree. And if someone is in need of an EAP program, also reach out to your broker. If you're a small business and perhaps maybe you don't offer benefits, I think we could probably give you some referral list of also some great firms who could assist in that area as well.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about, we have just a few more questions I know. Jeanie, do we have any from the Q&A? I know it's kind of a start of it.
Not quite yet.
Okay, very good. So how do I work through this with my employees, and I work through it for myself? I think we've kind of answered some of this already in the space of what we're talking about. So let's talk about the next question. How we are all in varying stages of our career and lives. What should I do if I'm at the beginning of my career, or if this is the first time I'm experiencing something like this? So what, that's a pretty heavy question, and I know that, but we do have some people who maybe have never really experienced a situation like this. Maybe they're new to HR, not even necessarily new in their career or a new position, have a seat at the table now and are in a leadership role, and this is the first time they're dealing with something. I'm going to start with you, Rob. Let's start with you. What would you say would be where you would start, maybe?
So I would probably counsel them to do the exact same thing I did, which was to reach out to my network. There are many organizations in this state, and in any state really, for HR professionals. So if you are not a member nationally of SHRM or locally of your local SHRM chapters, now is a good time to look at that. Because that's an opportunity to build a network of professionals that may have already gone through this or something similar to this. And they'll have so much information. They will have so much guidance, and there are even mentorship opportunities there. So if you're very young in your career, this would be a good time to be connected to a group of individuals that you know that you can trust, and they can give you some guidance on some of the issues that you're going to be facing as you're kind of going through this process.
I think you bring up a good point. Certainly, the local chapter here for SHRM is NCHRA, so Northern Colorado Human Resources Association, near and dear to the three of us, at least, since we all kind of found our start together there. If you're in benefits, NAHU, they have a chapter. I know there are payroll chapters and even medical HR professionals. There's a many different organizations that may tailor really to the work and the needs that you have. But when it comes to that HR space, I think that we have a natural inclination to really like the SHRM resources. Jeanie, would you add to that?
I'll just try a little bit. So this is not the beginning of my career. I'm on the back end of my career, but I do remember when I was starting out and kind of struggling to find my way through navigating some of these waters. And I agree, your network is a great thing. I can tell you one place to try to avoid is Google. I think Google is maybe not deemed the most reliable resource as you're trying to navigate some of these hard-hitting questions. The Department of Labor, go straight to the source. The state of Colorado has got all things COVID-19 related in terms of unemployment, how to file for it, what happens. There's a lot of workforce availability. Elevate is also a great resource in that process. I think all of those. There's also companies. HRX is one. We work with small clients to kind of help navigate some of these uncharted waters. But in the end, the one thing I would say is if you've never done this before, get help. Don't just either lay off or furlough or do anything without at least double checking to make sure you're protecting your benefits. If you have benefits in place, you're protecting your employees, your 401k, the longevity of your business, the employee morale, culture, those type of things.
I'd agree. And just to make it fun, we are all inclusive here. So I wanted to make sure I asked. All right, well, let's say same question, but let's say I'm at the end of my career on the back end, as Jeanie was talking about. What would be some good advice for me then? I have been through this before a little bit, but holy cow, my plans may have totally kind of changed a little bit, or it feels like maybe they have within the last month. What would you say to that, Rob?
So let me answer first from a financial perspective.
Sure.
It depends on what you mean by at the end of your career. So if you are, let's say, within 5 years of retirement, you should be working with a financial advisor of some type. Someone who can take a look at your 401k, who can make sure that your goals are aligned, that you are ready to retire. Because nothing is worse than saying, hey, I'm 5 years from retirement, retiring and not having it be what you thought it was going to be, or not being able to afford to retire when you want to. So if you truly at the end of your career, that is by far the one thing I would counsel anyone. If you're within 5 years of retirement, seek out a financial advisor, because they can help you put that all into perspective and help you plan for retirement appropriately. On an HR level, if you're at the end of your career, I would ask you to please reach out to those that aren't at the end of their career, because your guidance and your mentorship will mean the world to somebody just starting out.
You know, I'm going to just piggyback on that just for a moment and bring in my co-SHRM hat for a second and say, there is actually a lot of research out there that really does say that we have some students who start in, the HR path in their career early on in education. And there's a lot more in education now around HR than maybe there was even 20 years ago when I was going to school, maybe more than that. But what we have noticed is that we lose sight of those folks who graduate from the HR programs for about 7 or 8 years, and then they circle back in. So I think that we have this gap right here where I think you're exactly right. If you're an HR professional that's looking and wants to give back, and you're kind of in that space where you have the ability to do so, I highly encourage that mentoring. And again, that kind of circles back to just making sure you're connecting with your network and getting connected with people. That's what we really need and what we really want in that space. Absolutely. Great thought there. Jeanie, anything to add?
I think the only thing I would add, and I think Amanda knows this about me, why we went into business together. We had very different thoughts, but fundamentally, and I won't say what hers are, I don't want to speak for her, but mine, HR profession, when I started, it was not called human resources, it was called personnel management. So how it's evolved so much over the course of 20 some odd plus more 4-ish years. It's amazing to me, but advancing the HR profession, if you are an HR practitioner, you have a fundamental responsibility to pay it forward and teach others. I have the privilege of being able to look at some of the attendees on this call, and I know some of these folks, and as does Amanda and Rob, and that's what we do. We work with one another. There's nothing in it for us, but rather to just help. And I think if you're at the end of your career, that should be first and foremost in your mindset.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the both of you. So we're going to kind of come full circle here with our question pup and say, is there anybody that has any questions that we didn't get to? If they did come in, I know we're running at the end here. Again, I want to take a moment and just say apologies for any of the technical concerns. We appreciate a little grace as we're still working through how to make sure we can put these on 100%. So Rob, thank you for your time and grace today as we walk through this, and your willingness to jump in and provide some of your expertise has been really, really wonderful. Jeanie, as always, my partner in crime, thank you. I do appreciate your support and help through this process. We want to thank you once again for your time. We will send out the slides as well as the recorded session so you can see the full thing if you hadn't had an opportunity to catch the beginning. Other than that, we wish you to stay healthy and do good things and be happy out there, and we'll see you next week. Thanks so much.
Thank you.